To hash out the details of what's happening in this election cycle, we have the chair of the Democratic Party of Virginia, Brian Moran, on the phone. Moran was elected.
Hey, Will.
Hey, Brian. I was going to go through your bio real quick. You were elected to chair the House of the Democratic Caucus in 2001. You were chief legislative partner for Governor Mark Warner and Tim Kaine. And you've been a member of the Courts of Justice, Transportation Committee, Health and Welfare, and Institutions Committee. Is that right?
Yes, I served 12 years in the House of Delegates. I was honored to be able to serve the citizens of Alexandria in Fairfax County in the House of Delegates.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. I appreciate you highlighting the fact that we do indeed have elections on November 8th. With all that's going on nationally, we need attention paid to these races. They are indeed important, so I appreciate you highlighting them.
Yeah, it sort of, again, came to our attention because we were watching a video on the Virginia Public Access Project's website about voter turnout. So let's start there. I mean, why do you think you've got the state Senate in the balance here, and you're looking at almost 3/4 of voters saying they're not interested? What's going on?
Well, they may just not know all that much about them. I mean, there's a lot going on, in defense of Virginia voters. There's the economy, unemployment, national issues dominating the news cycle. Certainly, the Republican presidential debates. But there are elections in 19 days, November 8th, and I'd inform your listeners that they can now start absentee voting. They can vote if they, for any reason, are unable to vote on November 8th, out of town and so forth. They can start voting now absentee, and certainly encourage them to do it. And they are indeed important elections, November 8th. As much as national issues draw our attention and focus, these elections are important for education. The kids' education, transportation, the economy, job growth in Virginia, public safety. The legislators, both in the House and the Senate, really impact Virginia's daily lives on any number of issues, the environment, and so we really want your listeners to pay attention over the course of the next few days and make informed choices on November 8th.
Well, you mentioned just all the various issues that are at hand, but it's sort of become clear that the state Senate is the focus within the General Assembly elections this year, and even more specifically, I guess the GOP announced this week that they're really targeting 5 Senate races. 2 in Southwest, 2 down towards Hampton Roads, and 1 in the Fredericksburg area. Does that dovetail with your strategies as well, or how's the Democratic Party?
Does. I mean, as a former House guy, I always want to plug candidates running for the House of Delegates. But I think that the general belief is, of course, that we're not going to change the composition of the House. The Republicans have an overwhelming majority in there. And as much as we'd like to pick up a few seats, and we could, it will probably stay in Republican hands. Whereas in the Senate, it's a 22-18 split right now. So the Democrats enjoy a majority, but it is tenuous, and we have to maintain the majority of 22. And we actually have an opportunity to pick up a couple of seats. There's a great Senate race going on in Central Virginia from stretches from Lynchburg to Louisa County. Burt Dodson's running as the Democrat, and that's a seat where we can actually win and increase our majority. And it is really important to have that balance. We have 3 statewide Republican office holders, Attorney General Cuccinelli to the governorship, and a Republican House. And so to achieve balance, a Democratic majority in the Senate's imperative. And there's a lot of very conservative, extreme legislation that comes out of the House of Delegates that the Senate has been able to defeat. And it would have a serious impact on our quality of life here in Virginia. And so it's imperative we maintain a majority in the Senate. And as well as social legislation, other issues such as education. Mm-hmm. The Senate has fought back deep cuts to public education. And so, again, these are important issues, and the focus is indeed on maintaining a majority in the Senate, Democratic majority.
Now, is that going to be a challenge for the Democrats from a financial angle? One of the reports that's been circulating around the various news outlets in the state this week is about the GOP fundraising advantage. And does that concern you at all with 2 weeks to go that you're stretched thin on the money side?
Well, I think we'll have enough to win. We'll have enough, but politics costs too much. And the importance of these elections is demonstrated by the amount of money, outside money that's coming in. A lot of these Citizens United group, for example, a lot of these conservative national political action committees are now dumping money into Virginia to buy the state Senate. And I don't think Virginians are going to go for that. I mean, a lot of these races are local in nature. They know who their state senator is. We have a number of state senators who are Democrats who represent Republican-leaning areas, but they get reelected because their constituents know they're looking out for them. You know, they're fighting for issues that are important to those constituents, regardless of their party affiliation. So, all this outside money is not going to be able to buy the state Senate. We're competitive financially. Our candidates are working hard, and they're well known in their district. So, we're quite confident that.
Well, you mentioned the like Citizens United. What's your take on the campaign finance laws in Virginia? We had a show earlier this year about the fact that I think four out of the top 5 donors were from Texas or out of state. Do you feel like that pollutes the election cycle and the election atmosphere in Virginia?
Well, it's all relative.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, there's a lot of money being spent in every state in America. And Virginia has a very open campaign laws. Corporate money can be accepted. There are no limits. Now, some would suggest that's the Wild West. It might be, but it's all disclosed, and so it is up to the voters to decide. Well, if that person's receiving that large of a contribution, does that mean that person is representing their interests? So, and it's all relative. Other states have very strict campaign finance laws, but it seems as though the similar amount of money gets spent.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like anyone has come up with the an effective mousetrap to figure out campaign finance. And with the Citizens United law, it's even open more. It's something, Will, that I'm very concerned about the amount of money both sides of the aisle are spending. As party chair, I was tasked with trying to recruit more candidates and to run for office. And you want good people serving in office, whether it's in the legislature or as constitutional officers are on your local school board. Mm-hmm. A lot of these races just continue to escalate in terms of cost, and good people don't know how to raise that kind of money or are unwilling to raise the kind of money now that it takes. And so for the long-term consequences, I'm very concerned with the amount of money that's now in politics.
Well, you mentioned recruiting candidates. One of the things that struck me in looking at the campaign map for this year is how few seats are running unopposed. Is that normal for a General Assembly election, or are we somewhere where people just, like you said, don't want to deal with the expense and the drama of a drawn-out election cycle?
I think there's a combination of factors, particularly in the House of Delegates. There was gerrymandered districts. They drew lines that would protect the incumbent. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult to recruit a legitimate Democratic candidate when the district is overwhelmingly Republican. So you'll see, and in the Senate, you'll see the idea. The focus was to maintain the majority, and so the 22 incumbents, that's where most of the focus has been, in addition to a couple of other seats that are very competitive. So the idea was not just to have 40 races, because the you have to target your resources. Particularly with the Democrats not having as much money, we have to target our financial resources to a number of seats. And rather than a shotgun approach, we need to be more strategic. And so you'll see the fact that we don't have as many candidates running. In a statewide year, like in 2009 when you had a gubernatorial race, you saw more candidates running because it's more of a statewide driven message, and candidates were willing to run. This year, it's far more strategic in terms of the races, and so.
Well, how has the redistricting plan affected the Democratic strategy this year? It's because I know at least in the Richmond area they've really jumbled up quite a few of the districts, especially on the House side.
Well, they're gerrymandered. These are districts that are drawn to protect incumbents. And my 12 years in the legislature, I fought hard for a bipartisan and nonpartisan redistricting plan. And in fact, our Governor McDonald, talked about it while he was campaigning for governor, but then, when he didn't do anything about it when he became governor. I really think it's going to take some strong leadership to impose more fair redistricting plan. And what happens also is not only do you get incumbents reelected, but it polarizes our political discourse. In the House of Delegates, you have overwhelming Republican-drawn districts, probably upwards of 60 districts, extremely difficult for a Democrat to win. They're overwhelmingly Republican. Now, what happens then is that polarizes the discussion because that Republican district is going to be even more conservative because if you have a moderate Republican in there, they'll be challenged on the right. Mm-hmm. So they have to be very conservative. And so that just polarizes the debate in the House of Delegates. That's why you see such extreme social legislation come out of the House of Delegates because of those gerrymandered districts. Mm-hmm. In the Senate, it's not so much. You have more moderation because there's only 40 legislators, and so their districts are larger, so they have to take in both Democratic-leaning areas and Republican-leaning areas. So you have members of the Senate who are more moderate and work across the aisle.
That's the bicameral system.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's the bicameral system, right? That since our inception as a country, we've relied on the Senate to always be the temperance-minded body of government that sort of paces through everything at both the state and the federal level.
Our founding fathers they have withstood the test of time. They were brilliant men in a bicameral legislature. Thank God for it. Having seen some of the legislation that comes out of the House of Delegates, thank God for the state Senate of Virginia, and that's why we need a Democratic state Senate to provide that type of balance, moderation to the General Assembly.
We've got time for one more question. We've got an email here from Clark who said, I was reading in the Washington Post this week that state Democrats were trying to avoid the president during his bus tour through the state. What's going on?
Oh, I think that's the media just trying to find a story. I went to Emporia to welcome the president to Virginia. We were excited to have him to Virginia. He's talking about putting teachers in the classroom. He's talking about putting more officers on the street, and creating jobs by investing in our infrastructure, fixing our roads and bridges. We know in Virginia we desperately need that. In Northern Virginia, we're number one in traffic congestion. Mm-hmm. We have unsafe roads and bridges in Virginia, and we need to put people back to work. So I thought he had a terrific message, not only for America, but particularly here in Virginia. Over the last 2 years, 1,200 teachers have been laid off by this governor. We need more teachers back in the classroom. We need small class sizes. Education needs to be improved. The president's message is spot on. We need to get people back to work, and we need to get teachers back in the classroom. So I was proud to have him come to Virginia with that message, and Democrats continue to be excited about his prospects of winning Virginia again next year.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Brian Moran. You're the chair of the State Democratic Party. He's been talking with us about the upcoming state elections. So we appreciate you taking the time to fill us in on what's happening.
Well, Will, thank you for highlighting the fact that we have elections November 8th. People can start absentee voting, and these are indeed important elections, and really appreciate you spending time talking about them.
Well, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.